Let's be clear. I'm not a lawn guy. I don't subscribe to Turf Monthly. I don't spend my Saturdays meticulously edging with surgical scissors or applying 17 different kinds of chemical fertilizer that promise a green so vibrant it glows in the dark. My lawn philosophy is more laissez-faire, benign neglect, you might call it. So yeah, my front yard wasn't exactly gracing the cover of Better Homes and Gardens. There were some dandelions cheerfully dotting the landscape. I think they add a splash of color. A healthy patch of clover thrived near the mailbox, which the bees seemed to appreciate. The grass? Mostly green, but maybe not the uniform, crew-cut perfection you see on golf courses. And yes, there was a rather handsome, moss-covered decorative rock near the maple tree that I'm pretty sure was there when dinosaurs roamed the earth, or at least since the house was built. It had character. Contrast this naturalistic idol, as I saw it, with the property next door, belonging to one Mrs. Agnes Gable. Agnes's lawn was less a lawn and more a terrifyingly flawless green carpet. It was rumored she measured blade height with calipers and had her landscapers sign non-disclosure agreements. Her flower beds were geometrically perfect, her shrubs tortured into unnatural spheres. Her yard didn't just whisper conformity, it screamed it through a chemically enhanced megaphone. Personally, I liked my slightly wilder patch of green. It felt real. It felt comfortable. It felt, apparently, like a direct violation of the sacred covenants of the Oak Meadow Homeowners Association. The letter arrived, as HOA decrees often do, on official-looking, heavy bond paper designed to convey gravitas and impending financial penalty. The subject line alone made my eye twitch. Notice of violation. Landscape maintenance and aesthetic non-compliance. I scanned the bulleted list of my supposed crimes against curb appeal. Presence of broadleaf weeds. Okay, guilty as charged on the dandelions, but they're cheerful. Uneven turf height. Patchy areas. It's called character, people. Visible discoloration. Dead patches. Noted. Probably where the dog pees. Give me a break. Unapproved landscape ornamentation. They meant Bartholomew Jr., my beloved mossy rock. Overgrown shrubbery. Azaleas near property line. They were flowering. The letter concluded with the usual boilerplate about maintaining community standards, protecting property values, as if my dandelions were single-handedly crashing the housing market. And the required action. Remediate all listed deficiencies within 30 calendar days. Submit photographic proof of remediation to the Landscape Committee chairperson, Mrs. Agnes Gable. Failure to comply would result, naturally, in daily fines sizable enough to require a second mortgage. I read it aloud to my wife, Linda, my voice dripping with sarcasm. Unapproved landscape ornamentation? They cited the rock, Linda. Bartholomew Jr., he's practically family. Linda sighed, peering over my shoulder. She wasn't a fan of the HOA's nitpicking, but she also wasn't a fan of escalating fines. Okay, it's ridiculous, Dennis, especially the rock, but the weeds are getting a little out of hand, and those bushes could use a trim. But replace the whole lawn? Get rid of Bartholomew Jr.? Just because Agnes prefers AstroTurf? I crumpled the letter slightly. This isn't about keeping things neat. It's about enforcing her specific brand of sterile perfection on everyone else. So what are you going to do? Linda asked cautiously. Are you going to fight the rock violation? Fight it? No, I said slowly. A different, much more absurd idea starting to form. I think I need to address the root of the problem. They think my yard looks bad now? They have no idea. Just to cover my bases and to fully appreciate the financial absurdity of the HOA's demands, I called 3 different landscaping companies for quotes on full remediation. Landscaper #1, Gary's Greenery. Gary walked the yard, tutting sympathetically. Yeah, HOA violation cleanup. We do a lot of these. Okay, so full weed removal, gotta get the roots. Overseeding the patchy spots, deep trim on the azaleas, haul away that big rock. Probably looking at around $800, maybe $900 for the initial job. Then you'll want regular maintenance, of course, to keep 'em happy. Landscaper #2, Precision Turf Solutions. A younger guy in a crisp uniform armed with a tablet. Okay, standard remediation protocol. We'd apply a selective post-emergent herbicide for the broadleaf weeds, aerate and overseed the turf, perform corrective pruning on the shrubbery per HOA guidelines, Section 11, Subsection C, Paragraph 2, and remove the non-compliant geological feature. Initial service, $1,150. Recommended monthly maintenance plan, $150. Landscaper #3, Vinny's yard varmints. Vinny looked like he wrestled bears in his spare time. He kicked a dandelion. Yeah, weeds. Lawn's okay, rock's a rock. Bushes need whacking. Look, I can nuke the weeds, throw down some seed, hack the bushes back, get rid of the rock. $700. Cash? So, somewhere between $700 and $1,200, plus ongoing costs, just to make my perfectly adequate yard conform to Agnes Gable's sterile vision. All because of some dandelions, patchy grass I didn't care about, and a rock that wasn't hurting anyone. It wasn't just the money, it was the principle. It felt like paying a ransom for the right to have slightly imperfect grass. I sat on my front steps that evening, nursing a beer, staring at my list of violations. Weeds, patchy grass, rock, overgrown bushes. These were the high crimes demanding hundreds, potentially thousands of dollars to rectify. It was ludicrous. My gaze drifted across the lawn. What if the problem wasn't the minor imperfections? What if the problem was major? What if something happened that made a few dandelions seem utterly insignificant? Something that would make the HOA beg for the days when their biggest worry was my non-conforming rock. I thought about natural disasters. Floods? No, too messy. Fire? Definitely not. Earthquake? Possible, but hard to fake convincingly. And then it hit me. That sudden, terrifying geological phenomenon you see on the news sometimes. That thing that swallows cars and houses whole. A sinkhole. What if my front yard developed a sinkhole? Not a real one, obviously. I wasn't that crazy. But a fake one. A really, really convincing fake one. The idea, once planted, grew with terrifying speed. A fake sinkhole. It was perfect. How could the HOA possibly complain about weeds or patchy grass right next to a gaping, potentially hazardous hole in the earth? They couldn't. They'd be too busy panicking, calling city engineers, worrying about their property values plummeting due to geological instability. All landscaping violations would become instantly moot. Sorry, Mrs. Gable, can't trim the azaleas right now. The ground around them might collapse into the abyss. Mr. Chadwick, I'd love to remove that non-conforming rock, but it seems to be holding back the edge of the sinkhole. It was brilliant. It was insane. It was performance art of the highest caliber. I immediately started sketching. It didn't need to be deep. Just look deep. A shallow depression, maybe 6 or 8 feet across, deepest in the middle. Line it with something dark. Use paint and dirt to create shadows, the illusion of depth. Scatter some broken concrete around the edges, maybe sacrifice that non-conforming rock, and make it look like it was partially swallowed. And the masterstroke, surround the whole thing with bright yellow "Caution, do not enter" tape, stretched between stakes. Make it look official. Make it look dangerous. I presented the concept to Linda, complete with preliminary sketches. She stared at me, then at the drawings, then back at me. Dennis, please tell me you are joking. Joking? Linda, this is genius. It solves everything. It solves everything by faking a natural disaster? People will freak out. The city will come. They'll find out it's fake. We'll be arrested or sued or both. Details, details? I waved a hand dismissively. Think of the look on Agnes's face. Think of Chadwick trying to issue a violation notice for improperly simulated geological hazard. I'm thinking of lawyers, Dennis, and public humiliation. But imagine the peace, I countered. No more complaints about dandelions. They'll be too busy worrying if their own houses are about to get swallowed. Linda just buried her face in her hands. I need wine, a lot of wine. But she didn't explicitly say no. My mission, should I choose to accept it, and I absolutely did, was to create convincing catastrophe on a budget. Over the next week, I became a scavenger and a connoisseur of despair-inducing materials. The void. I bought the heaviest-duty black landscape fabric I could find at the garden center. Building a large water feature? The cashier asked. Something like that, I mumbled. I also bought several cans of matte black and dark brown spray paint. The cracks. A trip to the art supply store yielded tubes of acrylic paint in various shades of dirt, mud, and shadow. Need to paint some realistic cracks on a theatrical set, I explained to the slightly confused clerk. The debris. I collected bags of dark topsoil and gravel. The real prize came during a late-night recycling run past a construction site down the road, where I liberated several jagged chunks of broken concrete and asphalt. Perfect for that collapsed pavement look. Bartholomew Jr., my non-conforming rock, was destined to become part of the debris field. And yes, maybe a small, strategically damaged section of the fence near the hole would add verisimilitude. The tape. Online, I found it. A 500-foot roll of 3-inch wide, bright yellow caution tape. I also bought a dozen cheap plastic garden stakes. Authenticity was key. My garage started looking less like a place to park cars and more like the workshop of a very specific, slightly depressed B-movie set designer. The following Saturday, I began. I waited until mid-morning, wanting some witnesses to the initial ground disturbance. I marked out a rough 8-foot circle in a prominent section of the front lawn, deliberately close to Bartholomew Jr. Then, I started digging. Not deep, just enough to create a noticeable depression, maybe 2 feet down in the very center, sloping up towards the edges. It was hot, sweaty work. Neighbors mowing their perfect lawns paused to stare. What was Dennis doing, digging a big, messy hole in his already substandard yard? Mrs. Gable appeared at her window, her expression shifting from its usual disapproval to outright suspicion. Perfect. Once the depression was dug, I laid down the heavy black landscape fabric, carefully tucking it in around the edges and trying to create folds and shadows that hinted at depth. I used the black and brown spray paint to darken the fabric further, especially in the center, making it look like a bottomless void. Next came the artistic part. I arranged the broken concrete chunks around the rim, partially burying some, making them look like they'd collapsed inwards. I rolled Bartholomew Jr. to the edge, positioning him so he looked precariously balanced, about to tumble in. I even sacrificed a 3-foot section of my own fence, breaking the pickets and angling them down into the depression. Then, using the acrylic paints and some YouTube tutorials on scenic painting, I carefully painted dark, jagged cracks radiating outwards from the hole onto the surrounding grass and dirt. This took hours, getting the perspective and shading just right. I added shadows, highlights, layers of dirt and gravel. I even half-buried a garden gnome I didn't particularly like near the edge, his little ceramic hand reaching out tragically. By Sunday afternoon it looked disturbingly real, a chaotic, fractured mess centered around a dark, ominous hole. The final touch, the masterstroke, the element that would transform it from weird landscaping project into Potential public hazard. I grabbed the hazard stakes and the giant roll of yellow caution tape. Starting at one stake, I began wrapping. Not just one strand, but multiple lines, crisscrossing, creating a dense, official-looking barrier around the entire perimeter of my faux sinkhole, encompassing Bartholomew Jr. and the tragic gnome. I stretched it tight, making sure the bold black letters were clearly visible. Caution, caution, caution. I stepped back, sweat dripping, dirt smeared on my face, and surveyed my creation. It was magnificent. It was horrifying. It looked like a genuine disaster scene had inexplicably opened up in the middle of my suburban front yard. The contrast with the neat houses and perfect lawns surrounding it was gloriously jarring. Now all I had to do was wait for morning. I barely slept, buzzing with anticipation. I was up before dawn, peeking through the blinds like a kid on Christmas morning, if Christmas involved geological hoaxes. As the sun rose, illuminating the scene, it looked even better, more alarming. The painted cracks seemed deeper, the black fabric void more menacing. The yellow tape practically glowed. 6:15 a.m., Mr. Henderson, out for his morning power walk, stopped dead in his tracks about 50 feet away. He stared. He adjusted his glasses. He slowly backed away and changed his route. 6:45 a.m. The first dog walker. A woman with a small poodle. She saw the tape, saw the hole, gasped audibly, scooped up her poodle, and practically sprinted down the street. 7:10 a.m. Cars driving by started slowing down. Drivers pointed. Passengers took pictures on their phones. 7:30 a.m. Mrs. Gable emerged to get her newspaper. She walked down her pristine path, bent over, and as she straightened up, her eyes fell upon my yard. Her reaction was cinematic. A hand flew to her chest. Her mouth formed a perfect O of horror. She dropped the newspaper and stumbled back towards her front door, likely to call every single person she knew, starting with the HOA and possibly ending with FEMA. The trap was sprung. The chaos had begun. Within the hour, the street was abuzz. Neighbors gathered in small, hushed groups at a safe distance, pointing, speculating. Did the ground collapse? Must have been that old mine shaft they talked about. There was no old mine shaft. Should we call someone? Agnes already called everyone. I heard her. And then the flashing lights. First, a police cruiser rolling up slowly, the officer inside looking wary. Then, a large white truck with Oak Meadow Public Works stenciled on the side. Finally, a sedan with the city's code enforcement logo. They had arrived. The police officer, a young woman named Officer Miller, approached cautiously, her eyes scanning the taped-off area. The two public works guys, burly men in high-vis vests, stayed near their truck, looking skeptical but concerned. The code enforcement officer, a man with a clipboard and an air of weary authority, joined Officer Miller. I chose this moment to make my entrance, stepping out onto my porch, projecting an air of worried concern. "Morning, officers," I called out. "Something wrong?" Officer Miller turned. "Sir, are you the resident here?" "Yes, Dennis Miller. What's happened?" "We received multiple calls about a possible sinkhole on your property." She gestured towards my creation. "A sinkhole!" I feigned shock, rushing down the steps. Good heavens! I noticed the ground looked unstable after that rain yesterday, so I put up the tape as a precaution. Is it serious? The public works guys ambled over, peering into the depression. One of them, whose name tag read Sal, poked the edge with the toe of his steel-toed boot. He then knelt down, squinted, and poked the black fabric liner with a thick finger. He looked up at his partner, then at Officer Miller, and started to chuckle. Officer," Sal said, trying to stifle his grin. "This ain't no sinkhole." Officer Miller looked confused. "It's not?" "Nah, Sal stood up, brushing dirt off his jeans. It's a hole, yeah, maybe 2 feet deep in the middle, lined with landscape fabric. Looks like somebody painted cracks on the ground. And he picked up a chunk of the broken concrete. This stuff didn't come from down there. The code enforcement officer stepped closer, examining the painted cracks, the carefully placed debris. He looked up at me, his expression shifting from concern to deep annoyance. "Mr. Miller," he said slowly, "did you create this scene?" No one was buying it. Officer Miller sighed, a deep, profound sigh. "Sir, did you intentionally fabricate what appears to be a geological hazard on your property?" Mrs. Gable, who had arrived with Mr. Chadwick in tow, pushed forward. "He did! He did it to mock us! Because we cited him for his weeds! Arrest him! Arrest him for inciting panic!" The next hour was a blur of official annoyance. Officer Miller explained, patiently but sternly, the potential charges: creating a public nuisance, inducing panic, improper use of caution tape, apparently a violation of some obscure ordinance. She pointed out the significant waste of city resources, her time, public works, code enforcement, responding to a hoax. The code enforcement officer started writing citations for unpermitted excavation. Even shallow holes sometimes need permits, and potentially for violating landscaping codes in a new, creative way. Mr. Chadwick, HOA president, practically vibrated with fury. He informed me I was facing emergency HOA fines for the fake sinkhole, failure to comply with the original landscaping violation, creating a hazard, lowering property values through notoriety, and probably for breathing too loudly. He promised swift and severe action from the board. Mrs. Gable just stood there, arms crossed, radiating pure, unadulterated, "I told you so" energy, though even she looked slightly stunned by the method of my madness. I offered feeble defenses about interpretive landscaping and raising awareness of potential ground subsidence, but nobody, least of all the police officer, was amused. I was issued a citation for creating a nuisance and ordered to dismantle the entire installation and restore the yard immediately. Dismantling Operation Ground. Chuckle was significantly less fun than building it. Under the watchful and deeply unimpressed eyes of Officer Miller, who waited to ensure compliance, I spent the rest of the morning pulling up stakes, rolling up hundreds of feet of yellow tape, and shoveling dirt back into the hole. I had to pry out the broken concrete chunks, pull up the black fabric liner, now covered in dirt and disappointment, and try to smooth the area over. Bartholomew Jr., the non-conforming rock, sat forlornly beside the filled-in depression. The tragic gnome was retrieved, slightly chipped but otherwise unharmed. Neighbors watched the cleanup with the same morbid curiosity they'd watched the creation. Mrs. Gable observed from her porch, sipping lemonade, the picture of smug victory. By lunchtime, the fake sinkhole was gone, leaving behind only a large, ugly patch of disturbed earth, looking arguably worse than the weeds and patchy grass that had started the whole affair. The yard looked terrible. The original landscaping violations were now compounded by a giant mud patch. And the HOA wasn't letting it go. 2 days later, another certified letter arrived. This one detailed the fines for the sinkhole incident, $500 for creating a hazardous nuisance, plus reactivated daily fines, $50/day now, increased for non-compliance for the original landscaping violations, plus a new demand for immediate professional remediation of all issues, including the sinkhole patch, within 7 days, with mandatory reinspection by Mrs. Gable herself. I was back at square one, only deeper in the hole, pun intended. I was out the time and money spent on the sinkhole supplies, facing hefty fines from both the city and the HOA, and my yard looked like the site of a very small, very unsuccessful meteor strike. So, What did I do? Did I finally cave and hire Precision Turf Solutions for $1,150 plus monthly maintenance? Did I declare war again, maybe by installing AstroTurf and populating it with plastic flamingos? Honestly, I was exhausted. The Sinkhole gambit had been spectacular, briefly satisfying, but ultimately a costly failure. The fight had gone out of me. I called Vinny's yard varmints back. "Vinny," I said tiredly. "It's Dennis Miller, remember me? The guy with the rock?" Yeah, Sinkhole guy," he chuckled. "Heard about that? Classic. So, what broke now?" "Nothing broke," I sighed. "I just need the yard fixed. Pull the weeds, trim the bushes, seed the patches, make the HOA happy. And Vinny, the rock stays." Vinny came out the next day. He yanked the dandelions with brutal efficiency, gave the azaleas a much-needed haircut, spread seed over the patchy areas, including the Sinkhole Memorial, and completely ignored Bartholomew Jr. He even managed to smooth out the sinkhole patch reasonably well. $700 cash. Mrs. Gable conducted her inspection a few days later, clipboard in hand. She walked the perimeter slowly, peering intently. She couldn't find any weeds. The grass was attempting to grow. The bushes were trimmed. She scowled at Bartholomew Jr., but couldn't technically cite him again yet. She finally, grudgingly, signed off on the remediation form, lifting the daily fines. So the HOA won, I guess. My yard is now boringly compliant, except for the rock, my small, silent protest. My bank account is lighter. My relationship with Agnes Gable is permanently glacial. Was faking a sinkhole the best way to handle a landscaping violation? Objectively, no. It was childish, costly, and ultimately ineffective in the long run. But let me tell you, for those few hours that Tuesday morning, watching the neighborhood descend into mild panic, seeing the baffled faces of the police and public works guys, witnessing the sheer, sputtering rage of Chadwick and Gable, realizing they'd been duped by landscape fabric and spray paint. That was almost worth the price of admission. Almost. Now, if you'll excuse me, I think I see a dandelion poking through near Bartholomew Jr. Better pull it before Agnes deploys the satellite surveillance.